Eдэm Сэвэйдж from Tested here in my cave with a new one-day build, and today's one-day build is devoted to shop infrastructure. Now, these are some of my favorite builds because I end up living with these builds on a daily basis, sometimes for years. And when you design something right that works for you like that, it becomes a pleasure every single time you break it out. And that's what I'm hoping to end up with today. There's also several different kinds of shop infrastructure builds. There's like, oh, I've never taken care of that shelf over there, which is true. I've never taken care of that shelf over there. Yeah, it's got to happen someday. Then there's, I just got a new piece of equipment shop infrastructure. That is also something that I've done in the past. But today's is a tool that I've been using regularly, almost on a daily basis for decades, and I have been watching myself use this tool here in the shop enough to conclude that I think I need a mobile station for my soldering iron. Yes. Soldering. It is a key part of any maker's arsenal, and there are many different options for soldering irons, and I've used them all over the last 30 or 40 years. I've used plugins, I've used propane, I've used Weller and Dremel, and they've all been fine. I mean, particularly I like the butane soldering pens because they tend to get hotter, they heat up quickly, and they're quite reliable for me in my experience. But I've recently come across the soldering iron of my dreams, and it is this little puppy. My friend Zach Radding used this on when he worked with me attaching laser tag to Peter Jackson's World War I airplanes for Savage Builds. And I was like, dude, what is that? And he's like, it's this new thing. These soldering irons are fantastic. First of all, they plug into a standard 12-volt plug here. You can run them on a lithium-ion battery that has this plug outlet, but I have a preference over that, and it involves about how shops use batteries, right? Like you can buy lots of different types of lithium-ion batteries of different form factors and use them to power things, and that's fine. I have a whole bunch of these. The going to find the charger and plugging it in and going to find the charger and plugging it in, it becomes this whole extra bit of infrastructure that I find a bit tiresome. So whenever I can, I prefer to use the batteries I already have in the shop, the batteries for my cordless tools. Like most shops, I have chosen a specific brand for most of my cordless tools, and that brand is DeWalt. And so I have tons of DeWalt batteries, like this big fat FlexVolt 60-volt mofo. And DeWalt makes an aftermarket clip on these. They make an aftermarket clip that allows you to charge your phone through 2 USB ports. That's pretty freaking cool. But there's an aftermarket DeWalt clip that you can also buy that, in addition to the 2 USB ports, has a 12-volt port. So pop this into your battery, pop your soldering iron into there, turn on the soldering iron. It starts to heat up immediately. The top temperature that you have it to is adjustable. It heats up quite quickly, and I find, to be honest, this is my favorite sensitivity, form factor, everything for a soldering iron that I've ever experienced. I'm ecstatic about this thing. And I've been using it so much recently and monitoring, like I said, monitoring my usage patterns. I guess I don't need this to heat up for this bit. I've been monitoring my usage patterns, and I think I now have in my head the right design for a portable soldering station that allows me fast access to a soldering iron and all the things I might need with that soldering iron. That's today's one-day build. First things first, with a design like this, I'm going to gather all the things I plan to have on my portable soldering station, and then I'm going to figure out how to fit it in my portable soldering station. Here is what I've learned about my proclivities using the soldering iron. One, I need helping hands. That is those 2 alligator clips on mobile arms to hold your pieces in orientation with each other. Years ago, we covered this on Tested when I showed off my electronics cart. I found these great helping hands from China. I'm going to repurpose those here. I had built those helping hands onto my electronics cart with the thought that I'd wheel my electronics cart wherever I need to solder. I have found that I am not interested in doing that. I've tried to do that. I just find it gets in my way, that what I really need is a portable soldering station that I can literally pick up and plop on my workbench. So it will have helping hands, 2 of them made of those, 2 of them made with alligator clips. This is very funny. I know this looks the same as this, but this is the official lock line, the company that invented this beautiful rigid ball and socket technology. This is some B brand, off-brand, not nearly as good version of the same. So I'm gonna swap this out for this. I'll have wire strippers like these. I will have a torch, which is for tightening heat shrink tubing, solder, of course, electrical tape, the soldering iron station, which is the thing that holds the pen and the steel wool for cleaning the tip, the battery connector, a battery. Again, these batteries are just going to come off my battery line when they're charged and popped in as I need them, and some heat shrink tubing. I have found most of the wiring I do is narrow gauge wire, so I'm just going to have a small complement of this size of heat shrink tubing in my kit. I just don't need a whole versatility. If I need other stuff, it's right there. And wire nuts. Wire nuts are basically small mechanical connector for wire that you can do a solderless connection. This is just my preference. I love these little guys. I use them all the time. I go through probably about 50 a month, honestly. I can never keep them in stock. So I'll have a little drawer in here of probably 100 of these at any given point. Those are all the things that I've got to fit into a small form factor. That doesn't have to be small, but one of my other requirements is I don't want it to take up this much room on my table. Every time I get around to an electronics project, my table becomes covered with all this crap. So I want a small footprint, which I think means a tall device. I'm thinking this device will probably have like a 5-inch square footprint, but it'll be tall. And the idea is that it'll have a low center of gravity, so it's stable, but a narrow footprint so it doesn't take up too much workbench space, and all of this stuff fits in it vertically. And now it's time for me to figure out exactly how all of this fits into a 5-inch by 5-inch vertical package. I'd love just this like a chunk of steel at the base of this, but I don't think I have such a thing. To be honest, yeah. No, I don't think I've got one. Oh, well, I mean, as long as I use the big battery, it provides its own significant amount of weight. I have a couple of these flex folds, and I use them for different things. Yeah, okay. I'm going to operate on the assumption that the battery is the lowest thing on this. Right. Okay, so I can see that this is a complex problem to solve. Like, there's a lot of moving parts to it. So I'm going to start with the base and the battery connector. I'm going to go from there. So I'm going to be splitting my, all right. Once we get that settled, then we'll start to grow up from there to make sure we can hold everything. My goal is maybe not more than 18 inches tall to hold all the things in orientation. Yeah, let's get started. All right, that's okay. That's the good stuff. Let's see. Oh, more good stuff. Good stuff, good stuff, bad stuff, good stuff, good stuff. Okay. Let's take a moment here to talk about plywood. It's a particular issue of mine. I love plywood. Plywood's amazing. But not all plywood is made equally. So if you went to a random lumber yard and you said, give me some excellent finish ply, they might hand you a piece like this, which has two A surfaces, really gorgeous finished surfaces. This is a lovely piece of plywood from both sides. From the end, it leaves a little something to be desired. You can see it's, I know this looks like a lot of layers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers. In my experience, this plywood, which is often sold as like high-end finished ply, has very little cohesive strength in its gluing infrastructure, and there's lots of voids. For instance, like there, that's just an entire void that showed up while I was cutting it. A note to the cautious: if you put a piece of plywood like this into your laser cutter, those voids can get filled with hot gases and set your laser cutter on fire. I've seen it happen. If you want voidless high-end plywood, go with something like this, Arctic birch ply. Many more layers. Actually, I'll show you a close-up. And if you want to see some truly egregious stuff as another example, that's crap times 5. That's semi-disguised crap. This is the good stuff. That's the excellent sandwich filling. And this is glued that there are no voids, so there's no places where those hot gases can collect during a laser cut. I'm not laser cutting any part of this, so it's not going to come up. But in general, because I love plywood, I tend to like the good stuff. This right here, this is a Luan. This is a single center layer, sheathed in 2 nice layers. And again, this 1/8" Luan looks great on either side, and it can be fine for finishing certain things if you never have to put any mechanical pressure on it or anything. But from the end, you can see that it's got this big, fat, soft middle layer and 2 thin veneers on either side of it. And this stuff, I'm trying to break it. There we go. It just doesn't have the same tensile strength as some other aircraft ply that I've collected. Even this 5 ply, that's a 1/4 inch thick, is way, way, way better. What was that? Like a short 2-minute rant about my feelings about plywood? You're welcome. Start with the base. So it's gonna have that. It's gonna have, I think I'm gonna try and mount this. Oh, that's what I do. I put it in like this, because I always, I'll mount this on the ground, so I put this in like this. Then the soldering iron can plug in the side here just fine. Okay, so what is that form factor? That is, yeah, 5 inches. All right, I'm just gonna start cutting some pieces to size here and start rough assembling. I'm gonna break out the glue and my nail gun. Get this going. this would be, right? That would be there. And then if that was the diameter of that. Yeah, that'll do it. Okay. Happy with that. Happy with that. You have a certain amount to get out of the way. So these guys live there. Yeah, that guy, these guys can live here. So then I'll have two of these. One lives like that. Is that the right number? Should be. One each in there. Should be able to, so if those live like that here, and I have a second one that lives here. Now I'm getting somewhere. Just gonna slowly keep on drilling holes until I get what I need. You live there. Am I wrong about this? Maybe I want them over here. Because if they're here and I'm pulling this out, yeah, I think I want them here. Okay. That's going to be a separate thing, and that's going to be its own thing. Great. Okay, so I can undo that. Whoops. And I can Now I'm aware I'm using a lot of crazy glue on this thing. I'm using a lot of cyanoacrylate glue, but that's not to hold it to, that's not the final. It's to hold everything in orientation until I can use wood screws and actually make it all go together correctly. Just FYI. All right, it's time to do some assembly. Some assembly is required. Here it comes. I'm going to do some glue and some, yep. Okay, so that's pretty good. We're doing pretty good there. That goes there. This guy. So now Great. And then, okay, so that was there, that was there. My handle's in the way of my thing. Well, hell's bells, Margaret. We got a form factor that works, we're just not high enough. I mean, the handle's not high enough off the ground. All right, let's see here. Yeah, I kind of have to recut that, okay. I'm getting happier by the second. This is great. Looks like that. So, okay, now we're on the home stretch. I'm gonna put my little doodads there. Rubber feet? You brought her. Shall I take it for a test run? Let's. While the soldering iron is heating up, I'll grab a piece of wire. We have two pieces of wire, and we want to join them. So we twist the ends. We bring them in proximity to each other using the helping hands. That's nice, it holds its own weight. Oh, these are good. Oh, here we bring them together like that. It's not a pretty joint. I know it's not a pretty joint. This is just a proof of concept. It's not about my soldering skills. Stop yelling at the screen that I'm terrible at soldering. I know already. However, I am very pleased with my skill at building my portable soldering iron machine. Ooh, 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 ooh. Wait. There we go. Oh, yeah. Maybe a few more of those. Ah! Come on. I am so impatient. There we go. I have one more thing, which I don't know where it goes, which is the heat shrink. But that is as reasonable a place to pause right now as any. Oh, a really important note about these aftermarket DeWalt 12-volt adapters. If you leave the battery in it for like 3 days, it will drain the battery to such an extreme degree it won't be chargeable. So, do not leave the battery in the battery holder. Do not taunt. Happy fun ball. This has been a one-day build and I'm really pleased. See you guys next time.